Welcome to Tony Martignetti Nonprofit Radio coverage of Fundraising Day 2013. We're at the Marriott Marquis Hotel in Times Square, Midtown Manhattan. With me now is Anita Fee Willis. We're going to talk about in-kind gifts, and Anita is Vice President of Strategic Partnerships for New York Needs You. Anita, welcome.
Hi, thank you.
It's a pleasure to have you. Your seminar topic is building a robust in-kind gift program, a case study of New York Needs You. So you're the perfect guest to have. What is you see some shortcomings typically among charities in in-kind giving programs?
Well, I think a lot of charities might not even understand how they could be getting in-kind support. So part of it is really doing a needs assessment and figuring out where the gaps are, and then figuring out how they could plug those gaps with connections in their networks or going out beyond, who they already know.
Okay. Our audience is small and mid-sized nonprofits. Mm-hmm. So let's start with the baseline, make sure everybody knows what in-kind gifts are. Let's start basic and build from there.
Sure.
So how do you define the in-kind gift?
In-kind giving is when a company or individual provides support that is not financial. So for New York Needs You, which is a mentoring career development program that helps low-income first-generation college students achieve college and career success.
Okay.
For us, it means providing workshop space. That's something that we spend a lot of money on. It's just space for our Saturday workshops where our students and their mentors come together. We realized we were spending over $100,000 on food at these workshops, so getting a food partner to provide discounted food was a huge win for us. It's those kind of things. We realized, having a semi-annual clothing drive where our volunteers were donating gently used professional attire, to take it up a notch, getting a corporate donor to, donate stuff off the racks. It's really a different level of the program.
All right, so how do we do this? And thank you for explaining what New York Needs You is about. Mm-hmm. And where will we find it? Is it newyorkneedsyou.org?
That's correct.
Okay. Where do we start with our needs assessment? It sounds like you did a lot of introspection and close inspection into what the possibilities are.
Sure. We actually have a handout that will be on the website. We handed it out at our panel, which just ended. But that helps organizations as a starting point. And I think it's important for people from different teams across the organization to be involved in that assessment because, as a fundraiser, you have a different perspective than someone who's actually doing the work. And people doing the work at different levels recognize different things. At least in our program, that when I first started, people said, some of the students need like dental assistance and different things. And when we actually ranked them in priority order, there were the things that are in our budget that we were trying to get help so that we didn't have to spend so much. And then there was the wish list of additional items, the dream list of, if we had unlimited resources. For example, our students are in college and we want them to go on and be successful, graduate school. So getting a partner to provide free test prep classes was a definite wish list.
Yeah.
And then when we got that, then it comes off the list and then you have other things to focus on. So always kind of updating that list, making sure that you know what you're asking for. And then in our case, we make sure that those needs are communicated. So on my monthly dashboard, I put, how much I've raised financially, and I put the in-kind support. And when my CEO goes to our board, he asks, these are the 10 asks this month, and we'll incorporate in-kind asks as well.
And when you do get those gifts, whether they're on the real wish list or the deeper needs, some cause for celebration?
Yeah, absolutely. And we have a gong in our office, so we celebrate whenever.
Excellent.
Just as if it's a financial donation, you have to thank, acknowledge, and continue to cultivate the donor in the same way. And sometimes those in-kind gifts can then lead to financial support.
Okay. So once we've identified our needs, what's our next step? We start looking for potential partners or not yet?
Yeah, I think once you identify your needs, you also have to clarify your asks and make sure that you know also what your assets are. So in addition to knowing what you need, you also have to figure out what you have to offer because, from a corporate perspective, everyone is always thinking, what's in it for me? And so you have to think about what do you have that you can be leveraging. So in our case, we have a great network. We have these wonderful college students that are diverse and could be attracted to HR departments or diversity recruiters. And we also have ways that we recognize our partners. So, just things like awards, those are things that companies like. And so putting together, our partnership strategy, we really had a menu of options. And so for our purposes, it looks like 3 or 4 buckets for New York Needs You. There's financial, in-kind, volunteers, and internships. Mm-hmm. And then in exchange for that, we have things like the awards, the connection to our networks, the listing on our website, all of those kinds of things that we can offer.
So we do have to think of this as a two-way street.
Exactly.
It's not unlike going to a corporate potential sponsor. I mean, it sounds very similar to seeking a corporate sponsorship, maybe for an event or something like that.
Exactly.
Okay. So, taking an inventory of what you have to offer, and then how do we start to make our approach?
Well, I would say once you figure out, what you have to offer and what you need, then you start making a list of who you think could fill those needs. And so you can start with your network of, who do you know, who might know someone, and build from there. I think that's, everything starts from a smaller place. Usually it starts with the people that have already stepped up to be in leadership. So in New York Needs You, we have a number of volunteer boards. So we have an advisory board, a governing board, a young leadership board, and a mentor leadership council. So those people have all, volunteered themselves in a big way. And so those are the natural people that we start with.
Okay. What about vendors to the organization? Do you look to them, to your vendor list?
Yeah, and actually we're having this barbecue coming up on June 18th with Witchcraft, and so for that event, that started by them providing discounted food for our workshops.
Oh, excellent.
And then the CEO wanted to have an event for us, so he's donating all the food, and it's a great special event, and we actually had a vendor approach us, someone who did the flowers for our benefit dinner last year, and she said, I'd love to work with you. We explained we don't have a budget for flowers for this event, but she said, this is a market where I want to do weddings. I know you have young professionals, so I'm happy to donate. And so, we didn't even approach our vendor in that case. They came to us.
And in that, you didn't realize that the young professionals are a potential source of weddings in the future, and so that's yet another thing that New York Needs You has to offer.
Right.
Okay. All right, so we've identified, certainly the boards, key volunteers, vendors, other places that we can look for potential support, or if not directly, other networks that we can tap into for potential support.
I mean, for us, we really I think a big part of it is communicating. So, people have their elevator pitch. Like, everybody that works at the organization should know what you want, what you need. Everyone should know what the organization does, but then when those opportunities arise, so every meeting I go into, I think the great part about in-kind giving is it makes it much easier to get to a yes. So if a company says, I can't give you money, is there anything else? I have a conference room, and I can say, yeah, actually, we want a team retreat. We would love a conference room. Or we have this small group of ESL students that want to meet on a Saturday. That would be perfect. So I think that, the more that you know what you're looking for, then the more you can tap into those opportunities. I mean, you could be targeted if you know this exact company would fit this need, then you can start narrowing in on the company and who would you need to talk to, and then ask your network again, who knows somebody who might know this person.
Do you do regular training, or how do you disseminate the needs to other people who don't have this as a primary responsibility, but might come across someone who can help?
Sure.
How do you get that word out?
Sure. So internally, as a staff, I communicate that at our staff meetings, what we're looking for. And then externally, as I mentioned, we do monthly dashboards. And so we report that to our board so that they're aware of it. But we also have conversations with all of our volunteers about their companies and, what are they interested in, just trying to tap into the different ways that we can partner. Some companies provide volunteer matching, and some, we recognize some have space, some don't. So it's great to have the insider who knows that culture and that company better to know what their interests are as well.
Okay, let's continue the process. Who should be in the, how do we get a meeting? We're leveraging the relationship that initiated the interest?
Yeah, so ideally, if it's a volunteer that works there, we would have the volunteer in the meeting with us, and that just makes everything go smoother because they usually know the person. So, we don't have to prove ourselves so much because someone else is, already championing us from inside, and they speak that internal language, so they can say, I know we're working on this campaign, and I think this would be really helpful for meeting that goal, which we don't know as outsiders.
Do you find volunteers volunteers generally willing to go in those meetings with you?
Yeah, we've been really fortunate to have volunteers who are really engaged in the program, and so they're the best ambassadors for us. And so I think the only reluctance is sometimes if people, they want to make sure that they're fully equipped with the information, so we provide them with, our deck of information so they are fully equipped. We also let them know that we're going to be there to answer all the technical questions, if people want to know about our budget and different things.
Okay, next step, we're in the meeting. I'm going to guess a lot of listening about what the company's interests are.
Yeah, and we would have done our research before the meeting, so we should know what they're interested in already and who they're funding, what they're doing. Yeah. And then in the meeting, as I mentioned, we kind of have a menu of options. So we talk about partnering and give some possibilities, and we really want to listen to hear what resonates with them.
And what's the next step?
Sure. So then you do an ask, and then if it's yes, then you go from there. If it's no, either way, you're following up. The next step is always following up and continuing the communication. So if it's yes, you're hashing out the details of what that looks like, the logistics, and if it's no, you're still trying to figure out if there are other ways to get to yes. So if it's no on this kind of in-kind, we don't have a space that's big enough for your workshop. Well, do you have, some whatever it may be, depending on the company. If it's, for example, this clothing company, do you have some volunteer groups that might be willing to work with us to organize a clothing drive, that kind of thing?
Okay, or maybe that smaller space is appropriate for something else that you hadn't pitched. Okay. I always like to say 6 no's and you're halfway to a yes.
Great.
As long as you find out what the objections are, you can. It sounds like you're very creative. You can work around them.
Yeah, and if there's no way of partnering, it still doesn't mean that you shouldn't, maintain a relationship, because you never know where that person might move. And if you have a good relationship, they might go to the company where you really wanted to have the relationship to begin with.
Yes, excellent. Okay, are we in the execution stage now?
Yes.
Okay. How do we make sure that the partnership works for both of us as it's being carried out?
Sure. So, when we've talked about it, I've already given you all the different things that we can offer at these different levels. So you've communicated to me what you're interested in, and then we go from there. So if you've indicated that, you want to help with volunteer recruiting as one of the things of our partnership, then we talk about that. If it's, for example, the space, if you're going to host a workshop, then we talk about who should be my point person on that. Do you want to be copied on all these emails? Do you want me to talk to your logistics people? So it's just being very clear, because you don't want to bombard people with emails and things that they might not be interested in, but some people really like to be kept in the loop even if they're not the point person. So it's really making sure you have clear communication about the execution.
Okay. And after execution, the event is over, how do we express our gratitude yet again?
So you thank, depending on what you have as a nonprofit, what kind of media channels you have. We have a monthly newsletter, we have a website, and Facebook and Twitter, and so we try to thank our sponsors and partners on there. But we also just, as an individual, the handwritten thank you note, the email follow-up, just, making sure that people really understand that you appreciate this, whether it's money or in-kind support, that you really do value it. And that I think, sometimes seeing people as fundraisers, you think they just want something from you, but when people actually appreciate you and value you and, want a relationship with you, I think that's what people really want.
I do planned giving fundraising, and I write a lot of handwritten notes because they're so uncommon and so simple. And you don't have to fill an 8.5 by 11 sheet, but something really genuine, sincere, heartfelt, can be said in a couple of sentences, and it's so much more appreciated, I think, than the 8.5 by 11 letterhead, word-produced document. So I agree with your handwritten note idea. How do we continue the relationship?
I think it's really helpful for anyone in fundraising to be very organized and to be tracking everything they do, so that okay, we've had this event, I thank them, and then hopefully we're talking about next year's event or the next workshop you're going to host. So it's not the end of the conversation, it's just, moving on to the next step of when will we partner again, and making sure that you have some regular touch points. If you don't have an event again together until a year later, making sure that there are some points you're going to check in to just see how they're doing, if there's anything they need, making sure that you send them, a year-end card, that you've appreciated them, but making sure that there's some kind of communication along the way.
No different than individual fundraising.
Exactly.
We're treating people like people.
Yes.
What have I not asked you yet? We have still a couple minutes left. What would you like to remind people of that we haven't talked about?
Maybe what are the challenges around trying to get in-kind giving.
Okay.
I guess the challenges probably are just that people don't necessarily understand what it is. And so in talking to volunteers about it, you have to just give examples and make sure that they can see that just because it's not in a budget doesn't mean it's not possible. Sometimes that's better because you have more freedom around this kind of thing. So, we recently had a meeting where someone said they couldn't give us money, and we said, well, what about on a Saturday? Are you using your workspace? Would that be possible? And then, the conversation developed from there. But it's like you can't expect people to think of these things.
Right.
You really have to be targeted with your list of wishes. And as with anything, the more prepared you are, the better, more likely you are to succeed.
What about the organization that just feels they don't have anything to offer back?
I think that then you're probably having a hard time raising money. If you don't feel good about your programs and you don't feel that this is something people should want to be a part of, then I think that's an important thing you need to work on, because people want to be part of a winning program, so you need to feel good about it and be able to really identify what your strengths are and how can you market yourselves as unique.
Okay, let's leave listeners with one tip to get started. Get started in their in-kind. They have no in-kind giving program. Let's just remind, how do I start?
Sure, so you can use the worksheet on the website from today's conference.
NewYorkNeedsYou.org.
And this, the fundraising day, it's one of the handouts, so I believe it'll be on the website as well.
Okay.
And so basically just start by looking at your budget and figuring out what do you want to be spending less on that someone else could be helping you cover. And then make a wish list of things that aren't even on your budget.
Okay, so you have those two lists, the needs and the real aspirational wishes.
That's right.
Cool. Thank you very much, Anita.
Thank you.
My pleasure. Anita Fee Willis is the Vice President. I was going to say Director. It's a good thing I didn't do it off the top of my head. Vice President of Strategic Partnerships for New York Needs You. I want to thank you very much for sharing your expertise.
Thank you.
Tony Martignetti, nonprofit radio coverage of Fundraising Day 2013. Thank you very much for being with us.